Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of The Issues with me, Harry Boota. Today I am joined by a very, very special lady, and the reason she's very, very special is will become very clear to you very shortly when I read off her enormous and a bio that is sort of eye-opening, because she is an amazing, she's done some amazing achievements in her political career, and we will find out what those were. And she is Naveeda Ikram, a former councillor from Bradford. Welcome, Naveeda, on to The Issues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boota. It's great to be here. Thank
you very much. Thank you for joining us. Naveeda, who is Naveeda? Tell our audience who Naveeda is. What's your background? Where are you from originally, Pakistan?
So I was born in Rochdale, so a Lancashire girl. And my father used to work in Habib Bank, and this was back in the 70s. And so because of his job, we had different transfers to different branches across the country in England. And so I've had various schoolings, upbringing in different towns, had a great, I'd say, experience and learnt about lots of towns, people, cultures. So yeah, that's me. That's where I was.
Well, looking at your achievements here, you got elected as a councillor in Little Horton Ward in Bradford in 2004, and you had two firsts in the United Kingdom. You were the first Muslim lady to be elected as a councillor in Yorkshire and Humberside, am I right to say? And on top of that, one of your biggest achievements, which I think everybody should honour and respect you for, is being elected the first lady Lord Mayor, Muslim Lord Mayor as well. So how did that make you feel, being the first?
At the time, it was just something that I was very passionate, about doing, was getting into the community, getting out there, having a woman's voice within the council, particularly from the BME community. It started with me having a personal issue, and when I wanted to speak to the relevant councillor about the issue that I had, I was actually asked to ask my dad to call him. So I think that kind of really sparked my interest. It sparked that, thought that, how comes we don't have a representation, and why do I need another medium to be heard? And it was, I'm quite outspoken and I knew what to do, but I knew from where I lived and what I saw happening, because I've always been a volunteer, I've always been grassroots, I've always been a community person. Speaking to other women, I realised that we needed representation on a council level, and that's where it all started, and I joined the Labour Party.
Well, that's history. When you joined the Labour Party, I think we'll come to the future as it transpired a few years later. But starting off in politics must have been very difficult for a lady.
It was very difficult initially, and it was quite interesting as well. I had many challenges. I had to face many. Being the first itself will tell you how many barriers I probably did have. But I've always been very focused. I've always been really committed, and without knowing that I was, I was going to be part of being a trailblazer. I continued going door to door, which wasn't expected. There were many things where people would say, you're, coming up to be a councillor, you should wear a dupatta on your head, whether I should, I shouldn't. And I think one thing I stood for is that I'm standing for politics. Yes, I am representing my community, but at the end of the day, my faith makes me who I am, but also I'm not going to change myself, for anybody.
So how did you square that about wearing the dupatta on your head?
I think it was just talking to people when I went out, and I talked to men, women, different communities, different families. The more they got to know me, the more they talked to me. I think
as a Muslim, you mentioned dupatta there, which is very interesting. You went, obviously, you don't wear the dupatta, but you said, you were required to, you were told that you must, etc., etc. So
Yeah.
how did you square that up with yourself with the community as well?
Yeah, I mean, with me is I'm very proud of my culture. I'm very proud of my religion. I'm proud of what I wear. I wear I wear our own Pakistani dress as well, where I want to wear and when I do. So there wasn't anything, but I didn't want anything to be compulsory, and I didn't want to be fake. I didn't want to be somebody that I'm not. I was out there for a reason to be in politics, and that had a greater value to pretending to be who I'm not. I think I wanted people to see me for who I was. But I think as I moved on, family saw that I had high values. I had integrity. I was really honest in my approach, and I was very genuine, a genuine person. I think that's what, in the end, the reason I got higher majority and higher votes each time was that's what people saw in me, was the values.
What's your parents' background? Are they from Pakistan side or Kashmir side?
My mother is from occupied Kashmir and my father is from Sialkot, Punjab.
Achha. So you've got connection with Kashmir as well, especially the occupied side of things.
Absolutely. So I have been very, you'd say, quite always been involved in.
We'll no doubt we'll talk about the issues in Kashmir later on in the show as well. First of all, let me sort of go back to Bradford. You were a councillor for nearly 13 years or so in Bradford. Excuse me. What do you think the biggest problems and the issues and challenges that the Pakistani and the Kashmiri communities face in Bradford? Especially, but we can always extrapolate that throughout the United Kingdom, wherever our communities are settled in en masse kind of thing. So what are the biggest problems and challenges that our communities face, you think?
I think in some ways we've come really far. I mean, I remember when I was first elected, I would be in a room or meetings or events where I was probably the only female there. And that itself was different challenges. But when I came to the community, as I moved deeper into it, I think there were lots of issues in terms of, I'd say, education is one of the biggest thing, deprivation, expectations, I'd say, of what our community has and what inspiration we need to give them for our second and third generations. And I felt that was a key for me. It was my duty to ensure that I could build in that inspiration and that motivation for our families and the community. And now when I look back and I look at that 13 years of movement and the progression that was made within that time, not just in terms of women coming out in large numbers to vote for me and to be actually coming up and having their voice heard, because it's at the end of the day, it's the mother that is mostly at home with the child. It's
but did you if you look back at the legacy for yourself, and you mentioned that you had a huge support from the women that came and campaigned with you, etc.
Yes.
And do you know that a lot of our women, they suffer silently as well? And I think I've brought this question up with one of the politicians before as well in our shows about the mental health issues that our people suffer, that especially our females and elderlies, they suffer huge mental health issues. Now, did you achieve anything when you were in council? Did you manage to extend any help to the communities where it was needed? Did you put anything in place, any legacies that we can think of?
Absolutely. I think, believe it or not, it was myself that with the local schools started to introduce the coffee mornings for mums when they would come and drop their children to school. It wasn't something that happened before, and actually that was something that we started in Bradford 5. And I think that was a huge success because we were thinking, how do we engage with these women? How do we get them out? So the best time we thought is when they come and drop their children to school, and that's when we started to talk about issues, what affected them, issues around the area, what were their worries, what were their concerns, and what could they, and how important was their role in society and in the community. And I think that was perfect. I managed.
Well, what about professional health? Did you manage to put any professional health in place for these issues?
Yes, I mean, one of the things that I was involved with was being part of the patients and liaison service within BD5 and all the GP surgeries that we had, and again introducing something very similar, but by setting up groups that we never had over 50 groups, for instance, in my area. I mean, within my time there were 3 that were set up. We set up a ladies gym, got funding for them, and I was on the board of, you know, the local community centre, on board of Bradford Trident, and the whole mission was always to ensure that we could give that empowerment to women within our community, who would then take the lead. And through that, we actually developed leaders of the community, and that's, you know, a legacy that I'm really proud of.
Good. Let's talk about another thing that you should be feeling proud of, but I bet you are not right now, which is 2015 general election. That comes to mind. Well, I mean, should we be looking at Naveeda Ikram MP right now staring at the camera? You know, what happened that you were denied that opportunity when all the, I mean, the voting system, the way that the Labour Party elects its candidates, you know, as I remember from memory, it was Amina, who came from London, got 145 votes, I think it was, and you had 85. And then the third incumbent was Nasha, who had 13. You know, for whatever reasons, the winner withdrew from whatever pressures were put on her to do so. But should you not have been the obvious choice, being that you had 85 votes and the person who eventually took it had 13? You know, how did that come about? Where was democracy at that time?
Harry, first of all, I mean, being the first, you know, having the title being the first councillor, Muslim female councillor in Yorkshire, the first female Lord Mayor in the country, I think that itself was great achievements. Of course, being an MP would have been an added, you know, an added thing on my CV. But however, I want to add that as I sit here today, I'm very content of what I achieved and what I, you know, what my laurels are. So I don't really have any regret, but one thing I would say about 2015 and the Bradford West parliamentary selections was that it was a total disgrace, and it's a disgrace in many ways. I think through your questions, without me and you having a discussion, you kind of already knew that how did someone from outside, you know, just come in, got 145 votes, where, you know, me being local, you know, had very high votes, but still not as high as hers. So that itself showed that there already was a conspiracy that was running. It certainly wasn't democratic, and the parliamentary candidate was imposed upon Bradford West, and anybody that spoke against that, you know, would be suspended or, well, almost thrown out the party if they said anything.
What was that? Those threats come from the local Labour group or nationally?
I obviously national would go through regional, and then regional would put forward, you know, the decisions that they wanted to make. So literally left with members having no voice in Bradford West, and but at least very little voice. And it came to an end where people realised that if they did say much, they would lose their council positions or even their membership. So
isn't that a worrying thought?
I think it's very worrying, and especially when, you know, a certain card is used, you know, the victimization card, when it's actually the other way around. I'd say it was very, very worrying, and even till now, I think there's a lot of things that people know, but they've not said it because they see the example of those members that have been suspended and should never have been suspended in the first place, but it's only because they spoke up.
Well, you know, that truly is anti-democracy, that what you're trying to say here. You know, Bradford's always had issues, and I think you should, for all intents and purposes, you know, how did you respond to the, you know, when clearly, you know, we need to sort of discuss a little bit more on this.
Yep.
On this, we need to understand. I think the people need to understand. It's the first time that it's been spoken about out in public, as to what transpired in that room, as to where you ended up in nowhere, out of second place.
Yes, I mean, when first of all, when Amna got elected with that amount of huge votes, it was very surprising because she had never ever even been to the city. She'd never met any of the members, and it was quite a joint effort that somebody had made. But you know, it was good luck to her. She'd got it. That was absolutely fine. And the biggest surprise to me was that the candidate that got 13 votes came to my house and spoke to George Galloway, asking to be given the seat for respect, and this was happening in my own home where she called him at that time. And it was very worrying because for me, I could see no solidarity or honesty or, you know, loyalty to the party. So I was pretty shocked, and I could never imagine that somebody like that would be imposed upon us. But
she was going for the Respect Party.
Yes, but if you remember, Harry, you were in the hustings as well, and you were a candidate, and George Galloway brought this issue up, that how are you a Labour candidate when, you know, 3 days ago, you know, before you were made the candidate for the Labour Party, you were asking for a Respect ticket for Bradford East. At that point, her response was that it was a joke. So this is recorded, but people were so, I'd say, you know, at that time hyped up and against George Galloway that people didn't really take notice or heed of what he was saying and what the response was, because politics is no joke, and saying things like that is no joke, and having intentions like that is no joke. But however, I had heard that in my own room. She had admitted to it.
So you had George Galloway in your house as well?
No, I didn't. She had made a phone call to him because she was so disappointed that Amina had been selected and she hadn't. She wanted me to join forces with her to do something against that, in which I refused.
But obviously, because you with 85 votes, you know.
Yes, absolutely, and I believe in democracy.
Why would you want to team up with her?
Exactly. Why would I team up with her? Was number one. Number one, I saw the disloyalty that she had towards the party at that time, and I didn't really understand what the you know, whole aim of it was, which became very clear afterwards when Amina had to, you know, at that time she decided not to stand, which was a big surprise. But from what I know and what I heard, there was a lot of pressure put on her to withdraw. So when that happened, we were told that everybody congratulated me in their own ways from Bradford West, saying that, you know, we now expect that your name will come forward. You were the second runner-up, so automatically you should get it. But London decided to go for another election, but then that was literally conspiracy, was planned. Democracy would say, you know, second runner-ups, good enough a percentage of number of votes, I would get in. So basically the whole Bradford West in 2015, the whole process was illegal, I'd put it that way, because I never even applied for the second time to become a candidate, and the deadline had passed, and London had requested me to come down to an interview, and they were surprised that I had not submitted my application. And I think they only did that to legalise the whole thing, because otherwise it would have looked too obvious that who they were trying to impose.
Goodness. Well, thank you very much for that update, Naveeda. We're going to take a short break right now. You're here watching The Issues with me, Harry Boota, and my special guest, Naveeda Ikram. We'll be back very soon.
Welcome to the Marcus Zara Show, a brand new chat show.
Yes, we have so much entertainment for you guys, live music and exclusive interviews with all of your favourite people.
And these artists are going to be from all over the place. The artists are... Zara? The artists?
You was meant to book the artists.
You mean you've not booked the artists?
No, that was
Zara.
your responsibility.
I wasn't.
Anyways, guys, just make sure you tune in.
I just don't tune out. Zara.
Marcus, this was your responsibility.
You were supposed to book them. Why did you book them?
Do you know, I'm so fed up with working with you.
What is that supposed to... just make sure you tune in.
Marcus!
Welcome back to The Issues. You're watching me, Harry Boota, with my special guest, Naveeda Ikram, a former councillor from Bradford. We were talking about, before the break, we were briefly talking about some of the problems and issues that were faced by our guest here, because she was one of the candidates in the 2015 general election. However, things went slightly wrong and somebody jumped the hoop over her head, which Naveeda was trying to explain before the break. I just want to go back to it briefly before we move on to the next question. Naveeda, we were talking about the voting system and how Naz Shah, the current MP for Bradford West, how she got selected. What pressures from outside do you think that came into Bradford politics, into the Bradford Labour Party? That really, said, well, nothing to do with you, we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, nobody, there wasn't a person who wasn't shocked with someone having the least votes, 13 votes, to be imposed. And, with someone like myself, who was, the Labour graduate, grassroots, activist, unionist, everything, and having had the experience. But I think politics is politics. There's always politics within. Politics is at times about power and greed, and everybody's nowadays watching this very famous Turkish drama called Ertugrul, and from you'll see that this politics within politics and scheming has been going on for centuries now. So what's happened to me isn't anything new. It is sad that in this age and day and age, when we talk about democracy and transparency and fairness and equality and social justice, that this still would continue. But there is a powerhouse, and there was no doubt that we had.
Who was behind it, you think?
It was very obvious, and it was just not me, but the other candidates who saw that Khalid Mahmood was coming down himself. I know Member of Parliaments have their favourites, but he was lobbying much more than what an MP would do, or if they would give their a statement of recommendation. It was much more than that, and he was actually making trips down to Bradford day and night, speaking to people one-to-one and offering them all.
Why would he be lobbying for Naz Shah?
I really don't know. I mean, that was his choice.
And was there any other great powers behind Khalid Mahmood even? Was there somebody from Leicester involved?
There was a friendship, yes. I mean, Keith Vaz was the chair of this whole committee. Doesn't surprise me that, the way he had to retire, he was shamed, named and shamed, and to retire in such a way. But this is what happens, that, a day would come. People think they're so powerful, untouchables, and they can continue using undue influence. But at the end of the day, there was so many rumours and things about Keith Vaz, but finally he had his day. But he was certainly behind it. When I did ask him for a feedback of what had happened, he said, there was only a sick paper difference between you and this candidate, Naz Shah. And I just thought, right, I don't know what that sick paper difference is, but
13 minus 85 is like 72.
Yes,
72 is
absolutely,
72
more
is
or less
good thickness,
yes,
I think.
Yes.
And,
so it's past. It's there.
Can you ever take dirt out of politics? Do you think is that why politics are called dirty? Do you think?
I think that's why it is, and I think that's why a lot of good people sometimes shy away from it. And there are challenges within that, and especially I think in certain areas there are more challenges. Politics isn't as simple and straightforward.
I just want to go back to I want to go to something that happened in your career, and you were involved in a court case as well.
Yes.
And I think here it says that you resigned and stood down in 2017 after discovering court conspiracy against you and trying to tarnish your name.
Yes.
What was that about? What happened there?
It was certainly a conspiracy.
Who was conspiring?
It was actually, unfortunately, it was a very dishonest person who had got support from people from within my own party. And there's evidence there, which I have, which was presented in court. So there's no denial there. I'm not saying anything that's not evidence. So yeah, it was within the party, and someone had really used their undue influence. A member of parliament had used their undue influence to infringe, another constituency to make sure that there was a big hype created. I don't think that I singly would ever say that nobody should be accountable. Everybody should be accountable. Every public figure needs to be transparent. And if there is a complaint, that's absolutely fine, but there has to be a proper process, and there is a proper process. In my case, this MP actually, again, jumped the hoop, and I didn't get a chance to go through the Standards Committee. I had a very clean, clear, I'd say, record, without a single even doubt about my career or integrity or value in my 14 years. And all of a sudden, it became a police case. But however, when this was taken to court, the judge was fuming, and the prosecution, the CPS, were really, I'd say, literally told off and scolded by the judge, because even the evidence had been tempered. So let's put it this way, that there was a whole establishment against me and nothing came out of it. And I was exonerated with great honour and, with great pride. I knew all along nothing was going to happen, but I could see the conspiracies and the plans behind this, and obviously the rumours. But it's something that I had to wait to prove myself. And
Did you resign from the Labour Party afterwards?
Yes, I did. I resigned from, not as a party, but I resigned as a councillor. Okay. Because I don't think the party is wrong. I think it's certain, I'd say, within the party, there are certain sections or fractions of people that make things bad, but the party overall is not something that I believe.
Well, I think that flies in the face of what we discussed earlier on, because it was the party higher up that ruined your chances in 2015. So there is clearly, a link between the local and national as well. They all seem to be the same. Don't you agree?
I mean, like I said, politics is politics, and of course, I mean, when you're grassroots, when you're activists, there's no problem. We're running around, we're doing the campaigning, we're doing the door knocking. But obviously, when it comes to the parliamentary level, it's not as straightforward as
I'm not trying to discredit the Labour Party, by the way. No, let's just sort of get that straight. I'm just trying to get to the truth of, what actually goes on, because, we as outsiders don't know what goes on, and you've been in the Labour Party, and we just want our listeners to get some idea as to how politics works, And as I said, a lot of time it works dirty, but majority of the times it works for the people that depend on it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was there at the local level, we did a lot of great work. I believe the values that I carried with the party made me do great things for my constituents and my people within my ward and with the district. But like I said, when you're in the parliamentary level, it's a different ball game altogether. So, I think there's no doubt there.
Thank you ever so much, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
For the future, for your political future, as well as your personal one and the business one as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining me at the issues again this week. As I say always, the world is full of issues, and as long as the issues are there, we'll be there. Thank you for watching. Allah Hafiz.